Good evening. This is the Town of Ossining Planning Board for April 17th, 2019. How do we go around the table and introduce ourselves?
Carolyn Stevens, board member.
Jim Watchin, chair.
Jim Pacinas, board member.
Nancy Arcia, consulting engineer at the planning board.
Sandy Anelli, secretary of the planning board.
David Stolman, town planning consultant.
Kathy Solantis, planning board attorney.
Christy Adana, I'm from Kathy's office. I'm just sitting in tonight.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is Rayford Deverne and Sons for 52 Old Albany Oaks Road, Lot 3, single family home architectural review. Applicant?
Hello, everybody. So just to, I guess, to recap where we stand, we had went from the zoning board for variance so that we could reduce the extensive retaining walls that were in the back, and we were granted that. We had a couple of questions on the last meeting in regards to my neighbor, Mr. Rizzi, in the event that we had to put geogrid because our wall height would exceed 4 or 5 feet. Mr. Rizzi gave me a letter granting me permission. He told me that he was perfectly fine with it. We also talked about a possibility of putting a cedar wall on top of the wall, cedar fence. And if it's necessary, I've provided some pictures and we'll be more than willing to do it. Mr. Rizzi said he has no problem if we do or don't. He says looking at a new house is a lot better than what he's been looking at for the last 10 years. I'm aware of some engineering concerns that Dan just provided me with, and I'm going to have the architect and then the engineer answer whatever his requests are to satisfy Dan. And other than that, there really isn't any more changes, but we were out there doing some preliminary work, taking a look at some elevations, and it looks as though the walls are going to be even less substantial, bringing that house as close as we did, as what I'm going through on lot 1. I am 90% completed on lot 1. It's coming out really nice. I hope you guys are out there to take a look and like what you see. And that's really all I have.
Okay. David, I noticed that your firm has a memo on this item. Would you like to go through the
Sure, I'd be happy to. And John, these things are not, most of the things in my memo are the same as I said with regard to lot 1, so you're not going to see brand new things.
Okay.
But there's just some homework to do in terms of putting identification on the catalog cut sheets, project name, the address, and a date so that we can memorialize them in the resolution.
Okay.
So that's number 1. Number 2, I wasn't here at the last meeting at which this was discussed, so I don't know exactly what was said with respect to the retaining walls, which, if any, retaining walls are going to be the natural stone without mortar, and which of the retaining walls are going to be split block. So was that discussed at the last meeting?
Yes, it was, and we're doing the natural dry joint, just like I am on lot 1, and then we're doing the same wall in the back, which is the willow is the color, and it's, I provided the manufacturer and the specs on that. For that particular wall, I think it's Cornerstone is that.
So is it just the wall in the front that's going to be
The wall in the front and the side walls of the driveway.
will be natural?
Natural stone dry.
Okay, so the plan should specify that.
Okay.
Which are which?
Okay.
Okay. 3 is just sort of more homework. The elevation drawings, I believe, I recommend should have another window on each side like we did for
Yes,
lot
I
1.
told Jim, I already have the window. We're doing that on both
Okay, so
sides.
the elevation drawing should be changed to show that,
Okay.
just as it says here. There's some landscaping that's being shown on the engineer's drawing, but no specifications for the type of landscaping, the size of landscaping, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that needs to be shown. And number 6 here says the planning board may desire to have additional 3D views of the project submitted, such as were prepared for lot number 1. I don't know if you want that or not, but.
I've given that one. I
Right.
submitted that.
And what I'm saying, John, is that there were more 3D, JB did more 3D drawings for lot number 1 than you're showing here. And I'm wondering if the planning board would like to see more in the way of 3D visuals than are being shown as were done for lot number 1.
Well, particularly since you think that the walls actually might be lower than you originally envisioned?
Possibly not as high as could be expected where, you know, we're going 0 to 5. It's pretty much going to be identical to lot 1.
No.
He's almost got one finished, if you really want to get a thinking picture. We'll look at that.
Okay, I mean, we don't see anything that's gonna flag it, we won't ask for it at this time.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just a couple more things. Item number 8 is some notes that should go on the drawing, and that's pretty much it. So if you just go down the list, you said there's a checklist,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
I do have a question about the letter from Mr. Rizzi. Is Mr. Rizzi here?
No, he's not very well. He has COPD, so he's on oxygen.
Okay.
But he's been really, really helpful and cooperative.
Yeah, it would certainly help your project to have him be so accommodating. The only problem is that this letter, I feel slightly uncomfortable with accepting this letter as an indication of his viewpoint. It's not even a notarized statement.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask him to notarize if that'll satisfy it. Like I just said, the only thing is he's not very healthy, but I'm sure he would do it if he can get out to the bank or something.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you proposing to put the geogrid on Mr. Rizzi's property?
If we have to, yes, we have no
So-
choice.
So then that's going to require more than a letter. You're going to need to get a formal easement agreement because you're placing something on his property.
Even though it's just a geogrid under the ground?
It's still on his property.
If you ever have to do any repairs or anything like that, what's going
You'd
to
have to
happen?
you'd have to specify that you have the right to maintain it, to go access his property, to construct it. So we need more than a letter then. I'm not even sure what this
Well,
letter gives you the rights to do.
Okay. I wish you guys told me that last time.
Well, we didn't understand what you're proposing to actually put the geogrid on on another property.
I thought that was pretty clear.
Well, it's more the fact that it doesn't state that Mr. Rizzi understands that's what's going to happen. See, right now, all it says that you're welcome to join, which is great, but it doesn't say, for instance, he understands that it may be a permanent fixture under his property. Do you see the problem?
Okay, I'll just have more detail on it and I'll have notarized. That'll satisfy you?
That's not gonna
But you're asking for an easement.
That's not going to satisfy it if you're putting something permanently on his property. And also, he might not always own the property. So you have to get something that runs with the land that would be burden future owners of his property too. So we need this to be a formal agreement.
Okay.
I mean, it's one thing if you're just asking, this is what I understood, asking for access to go onto his property for construction purposes. It's a totally different thing if you're now installing something that would be a permanent fixture on his property.
Even though it's underground?
Yes.
Dan, that's correct then?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing if you were putting in a drain line or, you know, they're underground, it's out of sight, but, you know, if this
Okay, well, I guess
I
we
mean,
gotta talk
if he
to,
had to maintain it, and likewise, if the neighbor ever had to do excavation on his site, he's gonna have run into interference with your geogrid. Whether
So-
it be Mr. Rizzi or some successor.
Yeah,
What if
you're
the-
precluding him from putting something on that property underground if your geogrid's gonna be there, right? So you need something that's a permanent agreement with this property owner.
okay. Now, what if we don't need the geogrid and we're not that high? That's what
You know, it takes care of it.
Yeah, I know. But I'm not gonna know that until we're actually doing the site work. But I have to go
Well,
through, I have to go through that first?
Well, I mean, on my review, there's a couple of things that tie into that. You know, one being the details of the walls, because even though you have Rizzi's letter or whatever, the other, you still would have to do the same thing on the other side. And so you've got to determine what wall system you're using so that you know, because it'll be apparent, because you have topo, you have your first floor elevation, you should have your final grades, so the height of the wall will be known, and therefore then the type of detail for the retaining wall will be dictated by the system you use and their design standards.
Okay.
You know, you could go to a gravity wall, but that's a different deal. It require larger blocks to accomplish that.
This is not a waste, starting this, because no matter what you're going to install, you're going to over-excavate in order to install it.
Right, yeah.
So you're going to be disturbing this property anyway.
Yeah.
Now the question is there going to be something left on this property that's permanent?
So now I'm going to entertain possibly a larger stone. All right? If I had a-
Well, I mean, whoever's helping you design this and.
Yeah, I'll
you know,
talk to, now I'm going to talk to the engineer on that.
Also, I'm not completely comfortable with just with the wait and see approach. I think something should be on the plan that shows the geogrid, the location of the geogrid. This can't all be guesswork at the time that they go to construct, right? This should be on the
I mean,
plans.
one way or the other has to be documented in the drawings.
All right.
But
And even the length of the geogrid is dependent upon the height of the walls. So, you know, will it be 4 feet in, will it be 8 feet in? We don't know.
yeah,
So
at the
that's
last
why-
meeting, maybe I misunderstood. I didn't think you were going to do the geogrid.
Well, I don't think I had to.
So
Dan's the
we
one
were-
who suggested if this goes higher than, what is it, 4 feet, Dan, then the
Well,
geogrid would be necessary?
I made the suggestion in that it's dependent upon the wall system you select. So in the absence of knowing what wall system you're going to use and to have certainty on the wall heights of all locations, obviously the highest wall is going to govern the most rigorous detail you're going to have to use.
Okay.
So it's solvable, but, you know, as Kathy stated, we really need to know whether this will be done on the confines of your parcel or whether you're going to have to go on to other properties, and that's going to be governed by the system you select.
All right. I think I'm going to condense the walls in so I don't have to encroach on somebody else's property.
That's all.
All right.
I mean, one thing to remember is that when whoever you're working with gives you these plans, the more complete the plan you submit to us, the better we can go and give you
I
a
understand.
response. Otherwise, we're sort of, you know, making up hypotheticals for you, and we get into
No,
a
I get it.
situation
I understand.
where we're sort of backpedaling on what we're talking about here,
Right.
because we were not on the same page when we were talking about it.
Mhm.
You at this point have Dan's memo?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you've already spoken to David about it. All right, so we don't have to do anything on this matter at this point?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll wait for a more complete submission from you?
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, just for the record, is any members of the public want to speak on this matter? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the River Knoll multifamily development, 40 Croton Dam Road. We're doing a review with the preliminary final environmental impact statement. Is the applicant?
I think they were here. Yeah, they were just here.
Hi, everyone. Glenn Vetramile with the River Knoll Project. I have a handout for everybody to kind of follow discussion. I don't know if I'm not for everybody. Let's see. Yes. You have it? Okay. Everybody have it? Yes.
Actually, Sandy made copies for everybody earlier today.
Oh, they did? Well, get some more. You got it? Good.
Oh, we don't have a copy of the memo.
Sandy made black and white copies.
Oh, the memo behind it.
We don't need the memo behind it.
Well, that's what he submitted to us, that's what I'm trying
Tonight, I believe, is focused on recreation fees. As part of the, our submission, you, excuse me, assess various recreation fees on a per unit basis. So I put together an analysis of both the requirements relative to open space and then relative to the actual fee that is in your guidelines based on either a market rate unit or a below market rate unit. So the calculations come out approximately, including the affordable units, around 70,000 feet of recreation area is needed for the total project. And then if you just look at the market rate units, it'd be about 62,000 feet. Everybody following that? Yes? Okay, and then similarly below it, the suggested fee is $7,500 per market rate unit, $2,500 per below market rate unit, or a total of about $1.2 million. And then the provision in the code says, well, if you provide various amenities that in the view of the board, they can view those as offsets. And so I then went through a analysis, and we used the other project, Parth Knowles, as somewhat of a similar analysis. So we have exterior various recreation facilities. We have a community garden, we have a pool, patio areas, a whirlpool. We are talking about a landscape deck. We have the interior courtyard, which will have quiet zones. We have a children's playground planned. We have the trails to Veterans Park, and then we'll have on-site trails throughout our site that'll tie into local trails. Within the building itself, we will have a very large fitness center. We'll have a yoga and cycling studio. We're going to have a community room. We're going to have various, essentially like a, almost like a Starbucks, but just dedicated to the building, and then a bike room. So the subtotal of all of the areas is about almost 72,000 feet that we have relative to indoor and outdoor facilities that we'll pay for. And then our site only uses 30% of the site. All of the land area in the front of the building along Croton Dam Road, that entire green meadow, which is this area here. I think you've probably heard this before. Will remain open. We will have new stormwater basins which will help with the water runoff to some of the homes along Pershing. They get some flooding off the site, so that'll all be resolved by virtue of those stormwater basins, but those are planted stormwater basins. So once the stormwater basins are put in and you'll drive down Croton Dam Road, they'll look green and lush. And similarly here, today, which is the southern end of the site, there are all parking areas here. There's an administration building, there's an HR building, there is what used to be a former doctor's house here. There's a garage shed for all of the lawn equipment, etc. So there's essentially 5 buildings plus parking, and all of that's going to be raised and taken away and replaced by greenery, new plantings. So everything on the southern side of the entrance will become green at our expense. and for the benefit of the neighbors, primarily on Pershing, First, Second, and Third, and Narragansett. And similarly, we're going to be leaving all of this area green, purposely trying to keep the project up on top of the hill, away from neighbors. So you have to ask yourself, okay, you have not built on the most easily constructed area, which would be alongside here. It would have the shortest distances in terms of infrastructure, water, stormwater. And so do you associate a value to that for the benefit of everybody else? It's subjective, but it has to be pointed out, because from our standpoint, it's going to cost a lot more to bring all of the water lines, sewer lines, and infrastructure up here. We're also going to provide, at our cost, a water line loop so that areas over here have redundancy with areas over here if there's ever a backup for construction. So that's also another cost, not an insignificant cost, that we're going to be paying for. Any questions on any of that?
A couple of comments, Glenn.
I just want to, okay, because I also wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
Memo? Go for it. Okay. So, one of the things too that when we look at, and we're going to call them exactions or whatever you want, however you want to describe them, they're payments above and beyond the cost of building the project. And we have submitted to DOT a fairly ambitious redo of the intersection of 9A and Croton Dam Road. And they've accepted the concept for redoing that, and that's adding lanes, stacking lanes, both eastbound and westbound, so that traffic, in the instance of going eastbound, traffic today has to stay in a queue. It can't cross over at peak hours going across 9A, nor can it head north if it's wanting to head southbound. It has to stay in that queue if it wants to go up to the Croton Dam station. So now by adding a new queuing lane, traffic that wants to get around that's the stacking lane and then head south and not be obstructed. And similarly, heading westbound, there'll be a stacking lane for a new stacking lane for traffic that wants to head up to the Croton Dam station and not be, not have to wait for it to either go through or head southbound. And so what it does is it improves all of the level of services for all of the various traffic movements at peak hours and certainly off-peak hours. So that's a cost of about $1 million to us, if not more, in terms of all of the design work and the construction work. And in terms of benefiting us, it's going to benefit, it's really a benefit for the greater area. It's going to benefit everybody in the townhouses east of 9A, and probably the benefit to our project is relatively small. It's really a broader improvement, yet we're going to pay for it. We also have offered to make direct payments to the school district, which we've been in discussions with Ray Sanchez for 4 years. We have an agreement with them, and they can use it as they wish. They're currently thinking about making improvements to certain classrooms, but it's just direct payments to them. And of course, 10% of our units will be affordable units. These are luxury units. These are not inexpensively built units, but these are well-constructed, well-amenitized units that will have access to all of the amenities I just enumerated. And we're talking about 17 or 18 of those units. And the cost to build those units is somewhere in the order of about $5 million. We lose money on those units. These are rents that are going to be pegged at 60% of the AMI, the area median income, and that rent amount is way below what it costs to support those units. And the reason I bring all of that up is the pot is only so big to go around and make payments that are not specific to the project. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars of payments, whether it be improvements to 9A, direct payments to the school district, affordable housing, the setting aside of lots of green space, the raising of buildings to create green space for the people on first, second, and third, the putting in of a water loop doesn't benefit us, it'll benefit the people over in this community northeast of the site. And so when we start talking about, you know, additional fees, and particularly knowing all of the amenities that we have in the project, we just think we can only go so far, is really our point. Also.
Dave, you have some comments?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I wanted to clarify a couple of things.
Sure.
Recreation fees are not suggestions, to use your word, they're requirements. And they can be offset by the planning board for specifically recreational facilities, not project amenities. I think project amenities is a much broader term than recreational facilities. So that's how I wanted to just clarify those things.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Wayne Spector. I'm an attorney for the applicant as well. And I just want to add just a couple of points, some of which go to your comments as well, because one of the things I want to piggyback on to a degree is some of the arguments that were made and submitted by the developer of Parth Knoll regarding in general, the interplay between amenities and the rec fees. I believe that the arguments submitted should be considered, you know, they submitted a very detailed legal memo on that as well, which I've been provided with. And I believe that the concept of the offsets is pretty well ingrained, and there is precedent for it. And I believe in reviewing what Parth Knoll did submit, you know, there was a broadened overlook of what amenities should be looked at and what amenities could be included, including project-specific amenities such as pools, recreation rooms, community rooms. Those were submitted as well in connection with Parth Knoll, because again, it does provide recreational opportunities for people within the development who then are not burdening the town's facilities at the same time. And that's part of, you know, that I think needs to be, you know, continued and looked at as well, and carried forward as well. Just in terms of where we are now and what the process is, I just want to again, you know, state that our goal at this point is for this board to accept the FEIS at this point and move on to the findings stage, so that the matter can move to the next board. We were asked to address the recreation fees at this stage, although it doesn't have to be, but we are at this point doing it anyway because it's, you know, it's the desire of the town to do it this way. But our main goal at this point is that we are at a stage in the project where we believe that we should move on, complete the seeker process, move on to findings and then release the findings so that the town board could then consider the next stage, which is obviously the rezoning. So that's, nonetheless, as you just heard, there's a very detailed submission on what this project will include, and I believe this board is going to be considering, you know, this issue, and I want them to, I would like to ask that they consider it open-mindedly as to what is a recreation facility, consider the open space as well as being passive recreation, which is enjoyed by the entire community. It's obviously beautiful to look at, it's enjoyed by people. Green space is something that's very healthy for people and provides many benefits to the environment and to the community at the same time.
Yeah, I would add something else to the green space. You know, when I first started the project, I did speak with many of the neighbors, and I know if I had a house, alternatives to the site were to build single-family houses. Those single-family houses would back up to these homes, and you would be looking at the backyards of homes. All of the trees, all of these trees here, all of these trees here, all of these trees, if you were to build single family, would be gone. So the whole site would be stripped, It would have 3 times as much roadway. It would have likely 3 or 4 times as much stormwater basins. And so, again, the green space is a big plus for those people, and it's no different than somebody having in perpetuity homes that are built on golf courses. The homes that front on the green space get premiums over those homes that are interior from the golf front home. So if they know that that land will be in a land trust in perpetuity, which this is being considered for, the values of those homes that sit on the green space will improve for sure.
Now, is it envisioned that you have, the public would have, public other than the tenants in the location, would have access to these green spaces?
Yeah, we're talking about a trail system in the back. We're talking about, that is a trail down from the site down to Veterans Park, which is right here.
I mean, I think we need to be more specific as to which of these amenities that you're listing are going to be open to the public. I was a little dismissive of Parth Knoll's request for similar action. I mean, just the pools, for example. The pool is dedicated to your residents. It has nothing to do with anybody else, and it doesn't preclude your residents from going down and getting a permit and taking lessons or using their swim lanes during the winter or whatever they're offering there. So I don't really look at that part as being included in the mix. If there's something open to the public, I'm all ears.
Well, I think the other way of looking at it is if you're providing these amenities, a pool, for the people that are there, it's unlikely they're going to use another pool.
Well, I think,
There isn't another pool that, it's not apples to apples.
yeah, the examples you just gave are examples exactly of why your tenants would actually be taxing the town's facilities.
The town of Ossining doesn't have a summer pool that would be comparable, that you'd be alleviating that population from expanding by offering one on your property. I'm not dismissing your whole list, just some of
It's a
it.
good list.
Yeah, and you know, the trails makes at least a pretty good, the accessible to the public trails would make a good argument for its being an amenity. But the interior portions, is there going to be a Starbucks in there? Okay, so what exactly?
It's coffee style, lounges, I guess, are popular, and they become a place for congregating in these communities and a way for people within the community to get to know one another. We do see this as a community that's going to appeal to an empty nester first and foremost, and we think that profile of renter will very much like that.
I think the coffee bar, or whatever you would call it, is probably analogous to something like the snack bar at the Briarcliff Pool, where it's just another attraction to use a public facility. It brings people in, and it just entices people to use it.
Okay, but again, that's not going to be accessible to the other members of the public from the town. It's just for
None
the
of these,
residents.
none of these facilities are for the public at large.
Just so that we know, what's a dispensary?
It's
It's not what you think.
it was asked again today. It's not like something you'd find in Colorado. It's essentially a food dispensary that you can go to at any hour of the day.
Like a vending machine?
Almost like that, but more upscale. It's not anything to do with Colorado.
And dog daycare, so like Metro Pups, is that what you're thinking of?
What's that?
Dog daycare, it's sort of like what Metro Pups is that what you're thinking of?
Again, because we are trying to appeal to an empty nester, that profile has dogs, and because of the open space, we think it's ideal for a renter who wants to have dogs. So the concept is if you go to work, You can have your dog walked or whatever during the day and be tended to.
Any other comments from the staff?
Not at this point, not at this point.
Yes. You mentioned this, the town rezoning issue. What status are we up with that?
You know, that process is awaiting the release and of the findings from this board on the acceptance and then issue of the FEIS and the findings. And at that point, the town board would schedule its hearings, its public hearings on it. But this board has to act first.
The town board hasn't made any made indications of.
We would have to complete the secret process first before the board can make a rezoning, but I think, you know, they're still going through the drafts of the FEIS, so that's where we are in the stage.
We're trying to get the mitigation measures down pat so that we can memorialize those in the FEIS.
Okay. Has the town board made any indications of their preferences in any way in this matter?
I don't believe so, but there was, I mean, we could hear a little bit about the status of the meeting you had today. No.
So I sit with the town board. They did have a work session on this, was it January? Where the applicant came and presented at a work session the draft FEIS to kind of give the town board a sense of what direction it was going in, and the town board is interested in seeing mitigation measures, and it seems like that's the direction that the project has been going in. If the board wants some more direct feedback from the town and the town board can certainly hold another work session, or that request can be made, and the town board can express any comments if you are interested in that.
Alan?
Sorry, I thought we were doing the, hearings tonight.
Well, the only thing, what is right currently before the board?
This evening, do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were going to be talking about the rec fee.
I thought we were talking about the.
No, it's listed on the agenda as preliminary FEIS, but
Right.
that's sort of erroneous.
That's just the stage that we're in, but we're specifically just going to be talking about this.
So where are we with respect to the FEIS?
We're actually waiting, as I said, to get all of the mitigation measures down pat. So the planning board is satisfied with all the mitigation measures, which we're going to include in the FEIS, memorialize in the FEIS. And then when we get to that point, we'll accept the FEIS, the planning board will accept the FEIS, write a finding statement, send this back to the town board. The town board has to do a finding statement. We have to finish seeker, including the town board finishing seeker.
Okay.
And then they can move on to a possible rezoning.
And what are the outstanding issues with respect to the FEIS at this point?
Well, I'd rather not give you a list right now.
Okay.
Maybe we can talk about that at the work session, or I can provide that, but let's just say the mitigation measures.
So if we're talking about just the rec fees tonight rather, what is the basis for these numbers that are on your list here?
Well, the top section of this describes what's in the town code, just to give you reference. Understand? Here? These numbers.
Recreation area.
Right, okay. But I'm talking about the valuation amount.
And the valuation is what it's costing us to build all of these things.
Okay, so the second sheet, you have the item costs.
Yes. In the first sheet are the areas.
You actually have proposals for each one of these items drafted up
In terms of,
for the budgeting, in terms of what the actual cost is? I mean,
well,
these are all the round numbers.
the way this would go is, assuming we get past FEIS and the rezone and all of that, The next step will be site plan, and then the next step would be construction documents. We wouldn't do construction documents until we get through
Well,
this.
I don't expect anything that detailed.
But we've talked to builders, and, oh yes, my partner, a guy named Lee Lasberg, who's a big builder in the county, he developed those numbers.
It seems like taking the community garden, for example, you're planning on spending $25,000 doing something. Can you explain what that money would be used for?
They've asked for irrigation, potentially electric lines that would go down there for a variety of things.
I'm sorry, who's they?
The town board.
Okay.
Town board has asked for this. And so where it might go, the two locations that are being considered are either down in this area here, right on Croton Dam Road, or a spot up near Narragansett. And, but it would be community garden. And we're talking about fencing as well that we would put in. So the combination of fencing, irrigation, and some electrical work would easily be that cost.
And this would be about 3/4 of an acre.
Something like that.
And I see you have a value on that of $187,500.
Well, we put a value there of the land contribution.
Right, but you've run the density out of that land before you're giving it away.
We're just assigning a value to it. I mean, we
It's
spoke
not
to-
costing you anything after you get all the density you put up on the hill.
No, I suppose you could look at it that way, David.
Just an alternate view. Same thing with the open space down below.
Mhm.
3/4 or 70% of almost 18 acres. You're ascribing a value of that at $3.1 million.
Mhm.
But again, you've run the density out of that, and you have to leave that as open space anyway.
David, I've shown this in two ways. I showed the total amenity cost without the open space. Right there, you see that number, $4,358,000?
Yep.
Okay, specifically to address the comment you're making right now. So I figured somebody would ask it. And then I show what, if you value open space at $250,000 an acre, which is probably what things trade for in this area, what it would be with that. So you can make your own estimation either way.
On my sheet, it says total amenity cost without open space at $2.5 million. You have a different number?
It's a different sheet from what was given for.
Yeah, it's 2.5. I don't know why.
On one sheet, it says 2.5.
It's
on
2.5.
The other sheet, it says 4.3.
Yeah, it's 2.5. I don't know what that's pulling up. My mistake.
And just, I don't mean to belabor this, but just to get back to where we started, I was trying to make a distinction between project amenities and what the code says, recreational facilities, which are not exactly the same thing. Anyway, that's all I've got to.
So, let me get this straight. Have you seen the one that we were handed?
Bartels, yeah.
This, okay.
No, not
No, this is the,
an earlier version of
Yeah.
what you gave out tonight.
apparently you have a different version that
Oh,
you just gave
okay.
us. Which one's correct?
I have to see what you have.
I think it's just that one line. item.
No, there's multiple
There's
lines.
multiple.
There's multiple differences. In mine,
They
some
were,
of the other ones are
we
mine,
sent this
but-
twice to the town, so I don't know what version you must have the earlier version.
There's another one here.
So.
We sent it actually 3 times because there were changes as we got more information.
Probably would be helpful to put a date on these things. Okay, but you're telling us at this point, you had meant to give us a 2.5 million total amenity cost without open space, is that correct?
That's right.
So,
But the fees, if it's just a direct fee cost, is 1.2, so and that's not including open space.
Yeah, this is the version that has Sandy being copied for us, right?
Caption 3 line.
Yeah, I mean, the other ones are not as bad. There's a difference in the budget.
We can
Okay.
resend it tomorrow.
Yeah, why don't you resend it tomorrow, because as I sit here looking at the different copies,
Absolutely.
and pick the one you want, and
The one that's best.
whatever you think.
No, I understand. I understand.
Makes, this way we're all talking about, literally on this.
Yep.
Okay, is there any comments from the board at this time? Are there any members of the public wish to speak on this matter?
I would.
Name and address?
Ray Tucci, 29 Grandview Avenue.
Would you like to use?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ray Santucci, 29 Grandview Avenue. I have a few questions. One thing I have a question for is why were project revisions allowed from 188 units now down to 176? Why was that allowed, and also sidewalks now they're saying that they're going to put in after the public hearing was closed? That's one question I have. Another one I have is the 2002 comprehensive plan did not have any of this in there. And then in 2015, they said, let's look at Stony Lodge, but in it also says nothing about putting anything that would disturb our neighborhood that we have. That's our comprehensive plan. Yet, a month later, there's documents showing that he was already looking to put this in there. So what? And we've tried to address that. We've emailed. There's never been a meeting or anything. We've tried to get meetings about that, and they've never gotten back to us. We have emails and everything. Another thing is this.
When you say they, I don't know who you're talking about.
The town board.
Okay. We're not the town board.
I know that.
Okay.
So another thing is what are the costs that these sidewalks are going to incur on the rest of the residents? Snow removal and all that. Also, has there been safety studies for that road, for that type of pedestrian traffic now that you're going to add with all these other vehicles? That's another question I have. Also, he's saying about the stormwater, if you look at the plan, this is my house right here. All this stormwater management is going to be in my backyard. If that fails, where's it going to go? It's going to go right into my house. Why are you bringing you have a stormwater management basin here and here. Why are you bringing water from here down here? Also, he's also stating that you could put all these homes on this property. There's steep slope laws. You're not going to get all the homes that he's telling everybody that they would be able to put here. You cannot do it. So I don't understand, why don't they show what you could really put there, how many homes you could actually get out of there. And they're saying about preserving all this green space, but you're going to destroy an entire mountain or hill, whatever you want to call that. They're going to have to, that's all rock up there. I've lived there my entire life. I know exactly what's there. They're going to have to dig all this out and disturb everything. All that land is going to settle and all that. They're going to basically chop the top off of that right there. They're not preserving anything. So, I mean, who's really going to incur the cost are the residents who live there. That's who's going to incur it. The only person who's going to benefit are these guys. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public?
Hi, Laura Gwynn, 4 Cherry Hill Circle, Austining. I just wanted to mention that he mentioned that he wants to put in all this recreation, dog daycare, yoga studios, etc. We already have all of that in our community. We would want the people that live there to support the people in the community, not to be in a utopia themselves. We also have wonderful coffee shops in the area. where we would want the members from there to become a community if this project goes through. Why are we taking away from the people that already have supported businesses in the area will now start losing? We have wonderful dog walkers in the area. Now he's putting in all this private stuff up there. And at past meetings that I have been at, we brought up the school issue, and I was told, and we were all told at that meeting, that there wasn't going to be that many children moving into this. Now he's putting in a playground. That's children. Schools, I don't know who you talk to, but my grandson's here, and he is in the Austin schools. They are filled to capacity. They can't handle anymore. There's classrooms on stages in the auditoriums. So I don't know who he's talking to or who everybody's talking to, but playground to me is lots of kids, noise. Pool is noise. I mean, we're a very quiet community right now. We pay enough taxes, and I'm sure everybody in this room will tell you that our taxes just keep going up and up and up. And all of these things he wants to put in is going to cost us more. You're forcing us out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Good evening. My name is Antonio Santucci. I live at 47 Granville Avenue. I own both property, my son and I. The gentleman, Glenn, saying that he approached the neighbors and spoke to them, never approached me. I own 2 houses there. And from my experience, over 40 years that I lived in those houses, whenever there was an emergency at Stony Lodge, fire trucks would even get in. Even ambulance had problems. The entrance, the traffic is crazy. Actually, there was 3-car accident tonight at the intersection. You want to improve the intersection? Put an overpass, an underpass there. Then maybe we'll talk about it. There should be, if they're going to do anything like this there, they should put an exit on the other side of the road too, which is not against. Should be 2 exits in case of an emergency. Where are these people going to run out? Anybody ever think about this? I've lived there over 40 years, and I saw a lot of things going on. Fire trucks cannot get up on that hill. Now they're going to take the whole hill down flat. What stops them in the future to extend this building into the meadow and this and that? They told me that the neighbors are benefit. I'm not benefit. He's going to have trails where people are going to be walking. He's going to have a playground where kids are going to be playing, making noise all the time. Not that I'm against kids. I happen to be a father of 4 and 6 grandchildren. I love them. But there's recreation centers, there's parks for it, that we pay tax, and that's where kids they should be playing, not in somebody's backyard. This building just doesn't fit there. The zone is for residential, let's put residential. I'm not against developing a property. I've been maintaining a whole area because they've been letting it go. Trees broke all the fence. I put all brand new fence. It's crazy what they're trying to do there. This just doesn't fit there. Not only that, we've been trying to speak to the board. We never, my daughter wrote them a letter. They never answer it. I let my lawyer just wrote a letter. The next meeting, next public meeting, I'll have my lawyer there. And we want to discuss this further. We want to challenge, we want to see all the plans, the report, the study that they did. We want to challenge all this here because that is crazy what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Can I just respond about the public? Right now, we're going through the FEIS, and at some point, it's going to be complete, and then this board will have a public hearing on the FEIS. So there's still going to be, so only the public hearing on the DEIS was closed. There's still going to be a public hearing on the FEIS. Then there will be public hearings before, of course, the town board when they're considering the rezoning. So this is not the last, you're gonna have opportunity for further public input and comment.
Well, we did submit over 500 signatures, 500 families, and they all want the right to speak, but they won't come to the meeting because they can never get to talk. This has been going on for 2 or 3 years now.
Because this technically is not a public hearing.
I
But
understand.
the chairman is allowing you to speak, but there will be an opportunity for further public
Well,
hearing.
thank you for allowing me to speak. Appreciate it.
Any other comments from the staff this time?
I just want to make one comment.
Sure.
So last spring, in front of the property, there were big signs announcing public hearings. And those signs were up for several weeks. And it was published, and the town members were all given an opportunity to speak. And the public hearing process was kept open for 3 months for written comment. So everybody had the opportunity to speak.
And not one of them said that they wanted to do that.
Nobody got
Can I make a
answers.
suggestion? How about you post it on Facebook? We have sites that are.
They're not
publicly-
required to do that, okay?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
please, you have to
I
cut
understand.
this
I understand.
name. All right, so at this point, what is the next step on this process?
Well, the planning board, I think, doesn't have to, but the applicant is asking the planning board to consider reducing the recreation fee at $1.2 million, roughly $1.2 million, to some lower amount based upon the recreational facilities he's providing on site.
It doesn't appear to me that these numbers, although maybe a starting point, does not necessarily have at this stage sufficient background for them to be considered for that amount of money. I mean, as you pointed out, these numbers are just given by someone who's experienced in this matter, but I don't see anything more detailed in terms of this. And also, of course, some of the valuation seems kind of questionable. There's alternative
we
views.
can provide unit costs and area costs, if that makes, we can do that.
And then we would need someone to vet the numbers.
Do we have any, does the town have any method of doing this? Vetting the numbers?
No one on staff, as far as I know.
How did you handle the Barth Knoll submissions when it came to the numbers?
I don't recall.
I'd like to know, to the extent that those numbers were vetted. So I know that there was a,
Even if they
that was-
weren't vetted, Wayne, I don't think that's a good argument for not vetting these.
I'm not suggesting that it is, I'm suggesting that there should be equal treatment.
Well, that's assuming that the projects are exactly the same, which obviously, they're never going to be exactly the same. And of course, the situation is that you came after Barth Mills, which of course made it more difficult for your project. Because again, the situation is no longer the same. The community is already taking the brunt of the previous project. You can't keep on asking for the same treatment if the circumstances have already changed.
I think it's a fair question to ask for substantiation, and I have no problem doing it. I can recommend, builders that you guys can pick from, if that would be helpful. And they can take a look at it.
That would be helpful, Carol?
Sure.
Thank you.
I can give you several builders, and you guys can pick them. They're all well-known people. They're not, and Dan is pretty good at this stuff. I mean, Dan,
We use Dan as an additional check on the other ones, so that's fine.
Dan would know some of the
We
builders.
appreciate the confidence in Dan.
For sure. So to give the people to Dan then, and he'll know them.
If you want me to do that, sure.
Yes?
David, I was just, with respect to the Portno project, that was the prior one, do we have the memos and stuff that were?
I think Sandy
submitted?
provided you with everything that we have regarding this subject.
Oh, okay.
Because it's assuming that any of the laws changed by that time. Kathy, I assume if there's any updating that's warranted, you tell us?
As far as I know, it's the same, but
Yeah, the schedule of recreation fees has not changed since then.
All right, so we'll look forward to more information from you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You too, thank you all.
The next item on the agenda is the Rinaldi subdivision, 39 Stormy Town Road, proposed 10-lot subdivision. The applicant here?
If you wanted to build houses, I'd be like, go ahead. If you wanted to build it's not going to be a feature, it's about understanding that you're going to change the way we live.
It's better than
Yeah, but you can't, once that was a conditional, that's another argument, as I'm saying, but that there is only, we're only allowed one going out.
Good evening, how are you? We have gone through, since the last time we were here, we have gone through some of the comments. Can you hear me? Good. We have gone through some of the comments with the staff, and also we received comments today. And we're still working on those comments, and I just wanted to make some of the items that, like 4 items that we'd like to address from the board, and then what we're looking to do today is to see if we can schedule a public hearing. We're still doing work on the, we have commenced work, and Danny has been coordinated or present with the engineer about stormwater. We have done some testing. So of the items that I received from David today, there are some items that are technical. Then we have, I just want to point out that we have a review with, and I think Lance has received the memo, with Mr. Hamilton for zoning compliance with the lot subdivision, the number of lots. There is a comment about an extra lot, this extra lot here. I think we have no problem eliminating the extra lot and having that be part of the road.
JB, let me just mention, there's a little strip of land next to the roadway.
Yeah.
And it's not a building lot, it's just this little strip of land that should either be included in the right-of-way of the road or given to the property owner adjacent to it. So it's not a big issue by any means.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be its own separate strip of land.
Right, so we have, we can make it part of the right of way or add it to lot number 6. It doesn't really matter. I think we're probably better used by having as part of the road as the entrance.
Okay, so that's item number 7 on yours? Is that what it is?
Item number
5.
No, that's item number 5.
5. Oh, extra lot. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
The board really hasn't had a chance to review this yet, so.
Oh, okay.
Just to point out, number 6, they're actually planning on planting more than the required replacement number of trees, or tree inches. So that's a good thing.
In that item as well, just want to point out that of the 108 trees that we are replacing or we're taking out, 40% of those are in good condition. The rest are either fairly poor or dead. So when we walk the property, we can observe that, the trees. Then, as item number 7 goes, I know we discussed about the possibility of actually extending this road and how that will affect that. Will be lot number 10. We have, and we're hoping to, for the next presentation, to be able to present the board that when we do a steep slopes analysis of the adjacent property, I don't see much of a possibility of actually extending that road. That's very steep slopes. It's part of the club, but we do have an access, or we will leave an access for the easement, if an access to the sewer will have to be done. But we don't foresee this road being extended until past that property line.
David, you have a comment?
Well, that's adjacent to Torview, which is perhaps not the highest and best use of that land. It might eventually be developed with homes on it someday. I'm not sure that this roadway would necessarily need to be extended, but if the planning board saw this as a good way to loop through the Torreview property, the cul-de-sac already goes to the property line. I think the reason for that, JP, correct me if I'm wrong, is to get frontage for that last lot.
Oh, not totally, because we also need the cul-de-sac to get frontage and also for fire apparatus accessing the turnaround vehicle.
Right, you need a turnaround at the end of it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to the adjoining property if it's not going to be extended further.
Right.
Isn't there a significant elevation change
That's
between that?
what I was saying, that
Yeah.
I'm going to provide
Okay.
that there is significantly steep slopes.
So if it's not going to be extended, you might not want it to run all the way to the property line, because if that property is developed in the future, it'll be in somebody's backyard essentially. So, I don't know that it has to be extended or really necessarily needs to be extended. Can you pull it back a little bit?
Yep. Oh, the
cul-de-sac?
yes, we can look into.
And still have enough frontage for that last lot.
Yeah, we can look into moving that a little bit back.
Just check it out.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem.
And I think the rest of this is pretty straightforward.
And what were the two options on that little strip of land along the street?
Either
I'm
go
sorry.
on, JB.
Either add it to lot 6 or make it a part of the road.
I would rather we don't add it to lot 6.
Okay. So
Just the cynic in me sees someone coming here for a subdivision in the future.
A home shaped like a toothpick.
Yeah, exactly.
12-foot house by 50 feet.
I don't put anything past anyone anymore.
So let's make it part of the road right away.
Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Done.
That would also give a better access for, let's say,
Right.
an emergency.
Yes. Okay.
And the rest is just homework.
Okay. Dan, did you want to go through your memo?
I mean, I can go through it in detail, but basically it comes down to the plans just advancing to the next level and getting into civil engineering, which they do have a civil engineer on board now who's done the testing for the stormwater, and there'll be, profiles and utility design and all that, which is basically what my comments are all about.
So, Mr. Hernandez, you'll be bringing something more to us at this point.
Sorry.
You'll be sent, what's the next step on this matter?
It's another submission.
Another submission, that's what I thought. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So can we set the public hearing? We're still bringing the submission, but can we come in?
Do we want to set up a date for this, assuming he puts additions in?
It doesn't sound like the plan's going to change significantly enough to not.
So you feel
Colin, you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right,
Unless-
I think setting it is fine, but once you close the public hearing, as you know, the clock starts. And then we'll be holding to the applicant to give us extension. So if you open the public hearing, which I think is fine, because I agree that the plan's not going to change very much, I wouldn't be so quick to close it until JB takes care of all these things.
Right.
Well, yeah.
All right, so what's a good date to start this?
That was May 15th.
May 15th? Okay. So can I have
That's
a,
my 15th.
do we need a resolution to open this?
To set
A
it.
resolution to set.
Resolution?
So move.
Second? Second. No opposition, so. We'll see you back then, and of course, you give the submissions to the staff before then.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
any other matters on the agenda?
No.
There was a
Oh,
request for
there's
an
a
extension.
Extension.
They're asking for an extension.
Okay, what's the issue with not, was any problem with giving them an extension?
I know someone's here.
Hi, you the applicant for
Hi,
this?
I'm Mark Sorgan with Debbie Tunkswell, the site engineer for the
Okay.
applicant. We're just going over that, requesting a 90-day extension to complete the plat and get all the easements and everything lined up for that.
Okay, does staff have any issues with this?
No.
Planning board? Okay. So, Do we just give grant the extension, or you need a resolution?
Resolution.
Resolution.
So moved.
Second.
No opposition, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, the minutes, have we had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there was a mention of the artists. We should just mention there was some question about the daylighting on it.
Right.
25 feet.
25 feet of it apparently was not, did not find it, was basically not feasible. It's
Right.
making a field change.
And an issue to the adjoining, right, impactful to the neighboring
Right.
property.
Right, and John Hamilton is contemplating allowing the change as a field change.
He's deemed it a field change, so I don't, if that's the case, it doesn't have to come back to this board.
Right. The issue is whether, you have concerns about that, Carolyn. Yeah. Very good. So going to the minutes. Any comments? Any changes?
No.
Alan?
No.
Motion?
Move that the minutes be
Second.
adopted.
No objections? Sandy, you have the minutes? Okay,
I was going to suggest that if the board wants to just go into a brief executive session to talk procedure and get legal advice. And we could, however, indicate that we're not coming back out of the executive session if we want to.
so that we can let Andy leave.
We can let you go home.
Yes. Could a motion to that effect?
I'll move that we go into executive session to have legal advice on certain matters.
And never come out.
And that
And
will,
never come.
Well,
and
we'll be
we'll
adjourning.
adjourn.
And then we'll be adjourning at that point.
Never come out sounds a little bit more
Margaret,
permanent.
Second.
Second, and then no objections, so thank you very much.